Nintendo needed a stopgap for Donkey Kong after Retro Studios had moved on to their new IP, and thus, Skylanders with Vicarious Visions came about. Nintendo was so impressed with how Donkey and Diddy were portrayed that it got the ball rolling and an actual green light for an entire 3D Donkey Kong game made by Vicarious Visions. The project codename was Donkey Kong Freedom. The idea was to incorporate a more Donkey Kong Country style of movement and gameplay only in 3D. It was very obstacle-driven and very dense, but you could go anywhere on Donkey Kong Island. Vine swinging and vine grinding were two essential gameplay pieces. The game would enter development shortly after Skylanders in 2015, with the main focus being on the gameplay core concepts and mechanics were functioning and refined. They had Donkey Kong moving through a jungle very efficiently. The plot was something early on discussed, how Vicarious Visions had a factory opened up that was stealing the Kong's water from the Congo Jungle River. As stated above by previous users here, Nintendo chimed in and questioned what was in it for Donkey Kong since he never acts altruistic. So without changing the plot, VV claimed that it was causing the banana trees to dry up and decay. This placated Nintendo and was an easy fix for VV. Miyamoto was very heavily involved with oversight for the project, and played a role in the development of feet banana peels when he saw Donkey Kong was sliding down vines and ropes, expressing concern that DK would get rope burn or injuries on the soles of his feet. VV's pitch to Miyamoto made him overjoyed and excited. Vicarious Visions never got far enough in development to establish who would be the enemies, villains of the game who ran the factory. But there was a desire amongst specific VV team members to use the Kremlings. With some feeling the Kremlings were an obvious choice. This was never actually pitched to Nintendo, though. Development was abandoned before they could even request it. Whether or not Nintendo would have said yes or not is anyone's guess. The playable characters featured Donkey Kong with Diddy Kong mounted on his shoulders like in DKCR DKCTF, and a Jane Goodall redesign of Pauline. Pauline would be playable in specific stealthish sections grounded. There is a strong theory that Freedom's cancellation might have segued to her being repurposed as mayor of New Donk City in Super Mario Odyssey later on. Rambi the Rhino was the only rideable animal buddy. But keep in mind, development was very early. So those four, Donkey, Diddy, Pauline, and Rambi, along with possibly the Kremlings, may not have been the only characters that VV had hoped to include. April 2016. Founding brothers of Karthik and Guhabala announced they are leaving Vicarious Visions to pursue other projects. The very two individuals who have a strong connection with Nintendo leave Donkey Kong Freedom's fate severed and uncertain with new management takeover and Activision wanting more lucrative measures applied to VV. In November 2016, Activision assigned Vicarious Visions to become a support studio for Destiny 2, and as such, they didn't want VV working on Donkey Kong Freedom, as it was a title that Activision would not get full profits to, having to split with Nintendo, and demanded VV focus solely on Activision IP. Some of the plants and trees seen in Donkey Kong Freedom were repurposed for Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. December 2016, on or around, Donkey Kong Freedom is abandoned. 2017, Nintendo is disappointed Vicarious Visions backed out. But to make matters even more challenging, Universal Studios had already agreed to a theme park expansion for DKC, but Freedom was shelved. And Miyamoto didn't want to just not make a Donkey Kong game, so the attitude shifted to, looks like we will have to do this ourselves, leading the charge for DK as a series to return home internally in Japan at EPD. Tropical Freeze for Switch was an obvious choice to be ported amongst other Wii U titles that made the jump, but it got the immediate green light in 2017 as a way to keep the franchise alive and get it onto the Switch, as did Donkey Kong Adventure and Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Both would serve as stopgaps once more, like Skylanders in 2015, to keep the torch alive while they shift gears and start over within EPD. 2018, DKCTF Switch, Donkey Kong Adventure, and King K. Rool in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate all commenced the franchise refresh movement. It is unknown when exactly the new DK project commenced under EPD, but Heil has been informed it is a new dedicated team internally at Nintendo that will be the home studio for Donkey Kong as a brand not had since 2002 with Rare's departure. It is also entirely unknown if any of the Vicarious Visions project was at all retained from several years ago. Nintendo really liked what they were seeing, but there is literally just no way to know what state the current project is in, 3D, 2.5, 2D. But Freedom was 3D back in 2016, so the franchise is not locked in. The Bala brothers formed a new studio at the end of 2016, known as Valen, and their rapport with Nintendo lived on through Mario Kart Live Home Circuit's development, continuing the great toys to life concept. Reassurances that the brand is going to be taken care of and flourishing in the future. Miyamoto wants this to be the case long after he is no longer with us. Donkey Kong is his baby after all. The theme park, Donkey Kong spin-off movie. And we are going to get our first taste of that next week with DK's heavy presence in the Mario movie.